Am I overreacting, or was this what he deserved? I am not typically one to share my feelings in online forums, but I feel the need to find an outlet for the tension in my heart. This seems like the safest way to express myself. I, 24 female, began a relationship with my ex, 28 male, about a year ago. Prior to that, we had been friends for 6 to 7 months and discovered we had many common interests, which created a strong connection between us. At the time, he appeared to be kind-hearted, despite the rumors circulating about him, and he seemed to be aware of his flaws, actively seeking self-improvement. Perhaps he genuinely was that person back then. He operated a music studio along with several mutual friends, and we spent a significant amount of time there together. Most notably, he consistently supported me throughout our friendship, checking in on me and caring for me, often inviting me to join our friends when I felt overwhelmed, which I greatly appreciated. Over time, our friendship blossomed into something deeper. We texted every day, sharing thoughts about music, art, and design. He started playing in my band, producing my music, and collaborating on songwriting, which became a cherished time for me. I was in awe of his talent and admired his determination to pursue his goals. During this period, he was slowly pursuing me, and my friends noticed it too. However, I was still healing from a painful situationship and grappling with a toxic job and emotional baggage. I wasn't ready to enter a new relationship. Eventually, we kissed and discussed our feelings. We both acknowledged that we were not in an ideal place to start a relationship, but we genuinely liked each other. Then, suddenly, my father took his own life. Throughout that challenging time, he was supportive, always offering a listening ear. Within 2 weeks, we became intimate, and I recall him stating that he believed sex and love were two separate entities. He seemed apprehensive about true intimacy, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I remember the night he drunkenly declared, "I love you," out of nowhere while out with our friends at a networking event. It scared me because it had only been 2 weeks, but he reassured me that he said that to all his friends. I dismissed it. In that same month, I recall him sitting outside my workplace, where he expressed his desire to care for me and eventually marry me. He asked me to be his girlfriend, but I told him it felt like things were moving too quickly. I found myself comforting him as he cried and promised he wouldn't hurt me. The next month or two passed in a haze. I questioned him about our relationship status because I didn't want to become entangled in another situationship. We discussed the possibility of an open relationship, and I was open to it as long as we communicated openly. I struggled with intense self-esteem issues and emotional turmoil from dealing with my father's suicide and its repercussions. My difficulty at work only added to the strain, and my connection with him began to spiral into a toxic abyss. Despite his best efforts to support me, I never felt secure or stable in our relationship, which made me feel guilty. I realized I must have been so desperate for someone to acknowledge me that I was willing to accept almost anything. Open relationships and the concept of sex being devoid of emotional ties were new to me. Eventually, I communicated to him that I wasn't ready for an open relationship, and he respected my boundaries. During the first 6 months of our relationship, he navigated my emotional crises, my outbursts, and my life anxieties. I was avoidant, and our disagreements often escalated into heated arguments where we shouted at one another. I began to see a cruel side of him, revealing a lack of empathy. His anger flared just as quickly as mine. We both recognized that we should have ended things. Yet we couldn't. We never clearly established our commitment beyond him asking me to be his girlfriend one night after being intimate. To him, conventional milestones and markers of a relationship seemed unnecessary, a sentiment I agreed with to some extent, but it only fueled my insecurity. He began to discuss plans for us to buy a house together, live together, and build our futures as a couple. He dreamt of us living together while we continued to engage in unhealthy arguments. After each fight, I attempted to resolve our issues through communication, discussing how we could improve our relationship, and he usually agreed with me. However, progress eluded us. Eventually, I struggled with suicidal thoughts and ended up hospitalized, resulting in a medication prescription. I recall him chastising me, expressing disbelief in psychiatric help due to his past experiences. In October of last year, while actively working on my mental health and grappling with my father's death, I was still stuck in that toxic job. I wrote reflections about our relationship, sharing them with him, outlining my path to improvement and my desire to become a better partner. I attended therapy and endeavored to regulate my emotions with antidepressants and healthier communication. Our relationship improved, and we began communicating more effectively than ever before. Though we still experienced intense arguments and nearly broke up multiple times, the frequency of these conflicts decreased, which I considered a small victory. Then, I discovered his infidelity in September. I learned of it in January of this year. He had cheated on me with a man he met on Grindr. He had left his Telegram browser open on my laptop. When I confronted him, he was initially very apologetic, but became pessimistic about the future of our relationship as the conversation progressed. He explained his trauma, revealing he was sexually assaulted in his youth, and said that seeking these experiences was an act of self-harm. I felt deep empathy and wanted to find a way forward. I set my boundaries, explaining I needed to discuss this matter actively to move forward, especially since I couldn't confide in our friends without jeopardizing the communal space we shared, as he was a pivotal figure in the music studio business. Many people viewed him positively, and I felt unable to betray that trust. Eventually, I opened up to a mutual friend who I believed could keep this matter confidential, hoping for a perspective on his behavior. When I told my ex, he reacted with intense anger, accusing me of being foolishly naive and claiming I shouldn't have disclosed anything to his friends, despite my assurance that I left out the part about his assault and the fact that he cheated with a man. Nevertheless, I chose to stay and work things out, continually explaining my perspective and caring for him during the week following the revelation of his cheating, even prioritizing his needs over my own. The subsequent 3 weeks were incredibly tumultuous. We fought daily, sometimes multiple times each day. Initially, he was patient and caring, but eventually, his demeanor shifted. He nearly kicked me out of the house on several occasions. I felt I was suffering due to his transgressions and found myself caught in a cycle where my attempts to express my pain were met with anger and responses like, "I'm sorry I picked up your bad habits." Each time he showed patience or a hint of remorse, my heart softened, and I tried to forgive him. He also shared another incident from December involving a longtime friend. They had shared a bed during her breakup, and she confessed her feelings to him, but he turned her down. He concealed this incident until I uncovered his cheating, which made everything worse, especially since I had previously expressed discomfort regarding that trip. He justified his secrecy by claiming the matter was unnecessary to discuss since he had addressed it. I made every effort to create a safe space for him, only for him to request distance because my emotional state was overwhelming for him. I recognized that I was indeed too much lashing out and unable to process the emotional pain he was causing. I began to believe I was the core issue and understood he was struggling as well. The most painful moment came when he hurled my belongings across the room, telling me to leave. I found myself on my knees, begging for him to stop and listen. I berated myself for not walking away sooner. I remained apologetic until the very end, and all this occurred after I discovered his infidelity. He continued to use his trauma as an excuse, and I attempted to validate his experiences while trying to convey that his actions deserved scrutiny. I explained to him that his trauma and his behavior were separate. I still extended chances, hoping to remain in the relationship. I drafted reflections and shared considerations for improvement, aiming to practice healthier ways to handle conflict. Now, I regret all of it. I couldn't bear that he was the one wanting to end things after everything he had done. In a final attempt, I tried to discuss how his actions impacted me and find a solution. Once more, he couldn't handle it. I extended him grace, backed off when he requested it, and waited for his response while he distanced himself from me. He accused me of emotional manipulation and claimed I held him psychologically hostage, stating I pretended to work on improving myself but really wasn't. He expressed a desire for me to go a day without spiraling and asked for more leniency. Ultimately, I ended the relationship and confided in our friends. This pattern lingered for 6 weeks, during which I tried to give him the space he requested while grappling with my emotions and questioning whether I deserved this for my outbursts. The moments when he needed space were the hardest, and I felt he had evaded accountability for his actions while I was left to mend the broken pieces of our relationship. I truly blamed myself, and now I am struggling with those feelings. If only I had addressed my challenges within the first 6 months, perhaps he would have been more patient. If only I could have better managed my emotions, but deep down, I know the truth. It wouldn't have changed the outcome. There are likely more elements I omitted from this account, but everything shared is true. Currently, everyone in our mutual circle is profoundly disappointed in him, and while I recognize this burden is not mine to carry, I still feel an immense sense of responsibility. The most painful realization: I know I would take him back if he demonstrated a sincere willingness to change. I am no saint. I grapple with dependency issues and anxiety. I have work to do. I believe that my anxiety intensified in this relationship, and I ended up avoiding confrontation. However, I made a genuine effort to improve and communicate, and I did change. That is something I refuse to let him distort or diminish. It has been excruciating to navigate my shared responsibility and his betrayal and mistreatment. I am left questioning whether the person I fell in love with vanished because of my actions. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for being fooled by my manipulative ex and bringing him into my friends' lives, deserving to be blocked by them after 7 years? Bear with me. I am quite dyslexic, so my grammar and spelling may not be perfect. I am a 30-year-old female who has had 2 friends, a 25-year-old they-them individual. The pronouns will change as the story progresses, so I will use they-he for the context of the events, and a 28-year-old female named E. We became friends during college when we had to evacuate due to a hurricane. I was friends with E's unpredictable ex. His situation deserves its own narrative but isn't relevant here, and D was a friend of E's. At that time, I was a junior, while D and E were both sophomores. We frequently attended events together and engaged in typical, carefree college activities. During E's breakup with her chaotic ex, I was there for her. D practically resided at my house throughout that semester. E began dating her now husband and even watched my dog so that we could enjoy a girls' night. I graduated a year before both of them, but remained in the area and visited them regularly. Around this time, D also started dating their now ex, a male. We were all living in different states, and our school was in a separate state as well. Then, the COVID-19 pandemic struck, and E had nowhere to stay, so I offered to move back home, inviting them to join me. Conversely, D had a home but no means of transportation to get there. I first drove D back to their home state and then took E back with me. D and their ex came to visit E and me for about 4 days, during which neither E nor I liked him. A couple of months later, E found her accumulated mental stress overwhelming and decided to relocate to be closer to her husband. D broke up with their ex at this juncture, which wasn't a major issue. We supported D and only wanted their happiness. Sometime later, D moved in with me. Due to job constraints, they returned home after approximately 9 months. However, we stayed in contact. E got married, and we attended her wedding virtually. It was a brief, intimate, and beautiful ceremony. About a year later, I met my now ex, and during this time, D transitioned to using he/him pronouns. He also began dating a girlfriend who had been a longtime friend from home. We all gathered at E's house for 3 days, along with her husband, D and his girlfriend, and my ex. They all disliked my ex, and at one point, he left and messaged me, stating he would take his life because I brought him there. He isolated himself in a room for most of the visit. I realize now that he was merely manipulating me, but at the time, I placed my trust in him. Being autistic, I kept justifying his behavior, thinking it was merely a misunderstanding. For context, I adhere to very hippie principles and believe that everyone should be treated equally. Unfortunately, this means that, even when I disagree with someone's values, I tolerate it as long as it doesn't harm my life or the lives of others. My ex, however, was the antithesis of my beliefs, holding very traditional Christian values, and at that time, I naively believed he accepted my views. I thought our debates about our opposing beliefs were enjoyable, but it quickly devolved into threats of self-harm, accusations that I would abandon him to suffer with his abusive mother, and a series of degrading remarks towards me. I began to feel worthless whenever I disagreed with him. I am only now recognizing this pattern. Throughout my tumultuous relationship with my ex, I maintained limited contact with my friends primarily because I had restricted windows of time in which he was absent. I attempted to engage with them while he was present, but they felt uncomfortable, so I ceased those efforts. Additionally, as we all embraced new jobs, coordinating schedules became more challenging. During this time, D came out to his family. Some families were supportive, while others were not. They ended up cutting off communication or reducing contact with most of their relatives. Both D and E face their past family issues. That aspect belongs to them, so I will remain somewhat vague. E began attending therapy, discovering more about herself while also addressing some childhood matters. This journey unearthed some unpleasant truths, yet it aided her understanding. She adopted a new name during this time, but I will refer to her as E to avoid confusion. I was proud of her bravery in confronting these issues. D found a stable, if not perfect, job and moved in with his girlfriend. They and E reside approximately 3 hours apart, but recently reunited about 2 months ago. I was unable to attend in person, but joined a video call for a short time. I refrained from sharing any negative experiences regarding my ex, already aware of their dislike for him. I didn't want to exacerbate the situation and felt ashamed to acknowledge his troubling behaviors. He had claimed he would take me traveling, support my artistic endeavors, and provide companionship. We planned on marrying and eventually adopting a child. Adoption was the only way I could have a child, as I do not believe in adding more children to the world when there are already kids in need that I could help. However, all of this was merely the deception that I longed to hear. Lately, my ex had become notably distant, prompting me to go through his phone. I am not proud of this action, yet it became necessary since he stopped communicating with me almost entirely. What I discovered was shocking. He had been unfaithful to me with multiple individuals, and everything values, goals, and aspects he claimed to enjoy was all a facade. My mind was in chaos. I questioned what was real anymore, and, truthfully, I still don't know. I couldn't comprehend how he could conceal so much from me without me noticing. When I confronted him, he merely shrugged it off. He ominously warned me that if I evicted him, my actions would result in his demise. A year prior, we had adopted a dog together, and about 4 months ago, we brought home a cat. My ex threatened that if he left, he would take the animals and abandon them at a shelter, stating that I didn't deserve the pets due to murdering his child. I was appalled to hear this. When we first met, I had been open about my child-free status due to medical complications. About a year into our relationship, I had to terminate a pregnancy. At the time, he wanted me to keep the baby, but I genuinely couldn't. It felt as if his mask had finally slipped, and I was filled with dread. I struggled to process the myriad lies and truths I was now confronted with. I reached out to E and D for support, but had to be vague since my ex was still in my home, and I was unable to break down completely. We have maintained a group chat since college. The exact words exchanged were, E, when can you talk? We're concerned. Me, really, I'm fine. Let's just say I found out some truths. E, well, we are here for you whenever. D, love you lots, I hope you are okay, I'm here for you. If I had realized just how awful he was at that moment, I would have found it impossible to function. I needed to arrange documents and could not simply leave my home due to my pets. I didn't trust him not to harm his 2 and my 3 animals. I still had to coexist with him for several more weeks. Fortunately, I managed to prepare everything a week ahead of time. He departed on a Sunday, yet I needed to brace myself for a 6-hour journey for a work event that weekend. I had to push through my workload that week to finish on time while also processing everything that had transpired. This job was the first I had secured in weeks, and I desperately needed the income. On Monday, I called my friends, attempting to share my entire story. My situation remained chaotic and unsettling. I had been so frightened that I hadn't slept for 3 days. E answered the call initially, which wasn't surprising since D often worked a lot. We waited a while to see if D would join, but I ended up recounting my experience over just the last 3 months, which primarily centered on the infidelity. About 20 minutes into my narration, D joined, and I began anew, but then they both got busy and had to leave after a total of an hour-long conversation. During the call, they expressed their support and concern for me. I was unable to go into detail or promptly admit how accurate their perceptions of him had been. That was all the time I was given. The following day, I attempted to call E to elaborate further, but they were busy. I tried to push my thoughts aside and simply focus on making it through the event. The brief, vague discussions and the 1-hour call turned out to be our last communication. Then, on Thursday, the night I set off for the event, I received an extensive text message from D expressing they could no longer be my friend because I sympathized with my ex. You only left him because he cheated. Apparently, that was the only line he couldn't cross. D also claimed that during the 3 days a year ago, my ex had made derogatory comments about them. You brought a man who spoke hate speech against the very minorities I and many of my friends belong to. I was taken aback. I couldn't pinpoint when this could have possibly occurred. Personally, he was against the LGBTQ community, but insisted on not imposing his views on others. His friends during the 2 years I knew him consisted of a group of gay furry men, so I trusted him. D also launched into a tirade about some random news events. I don't follow social media or the news closely, so I was entirely unaware that these events had occurred. Somehow, from these comments, it was interpreted that I was trying to deport D's family and friends. I had never made any statement to that effect. My own father and grandmother were not born in the United States. All the hostility stemming from his actions and beliefs somehow fell onto my shoulders for showing sympathy. Remaining friends with you after this would only indicate that your actions have no consequences. E did not reach out. I was simply blocked without any further communication. I am utterly bewildered by everything now. I always aimed to be a supportive friend to them and genuinely enjoyed their company. I cannot grasp why our relationship shifted so drastically for them to view me in this light. Do I truly deserve being blocked for having brought him into their lives? Did my actions reflect a choice of him over them? It has been about a month since we lost contact, but I am still uncertain. I thought we shared a strong friendship and can't comprehend what transpired. Was I deceived by them as I was by my ex? Am I the antagonist in this situation? Story 3. I don't trust my roommate alone in the house anymore. I worry for my cats. I have a roommate who rents a bedroom and bathroom in my residence. I am the homeowner and also live here. It is an informal arrangement. She moved in February 2024. I provided her with the first month of rent for free and subsequently charged her $500 per month, which is quite affordable for this area. In return, my house would not remain vacant while I was away for extended periods, and I wouldn't have to worry about my cats previously. I had 3. There is no written lease. She has always paid in cash. Over the past year, the situation has been just acceptable. She tends to keep to herself but has consistently tested my boundaries, too numerous to detail. To be fair, I overlooked much of this behavior in order to maintain a harmonious living environment. That was my mistake, as it only encouraged her to push further. Additionally, she exhibits strange mood swings that are quite off-putting. Things escalated over the summer when she returned home after 2 a.m. and stumbled over a UPS package on the front porch. She erupted in anger, shouting my name at the top of her lungs, irrationally placing the blame on me. The next morning, I had a serious conversation with her where I suggested that perhaps it would be best for her to move out. She apologized and attributed her mood swings to menopause, claiming she would strive to improve. During the Christmas holidays, I traveled out of state to visit family. While I was away, my elderly cat fell seriously ill. I contacted an emergency vet and my roommate took him in. Unfortunately, he was euthanized on New Year's Eve. I handled all the associated bills over the phone. It deeply pains me that this occurred while I was absent, and I could not be there with him in his final moments. I had intended to spend most of February in the South assisting my parents. They are aging, and my father is undergoing chemotherapy. This trip had been arranged for some time. Just 2 days before I departed, my roommate vented to my best friend over Facebook Messenger, complaining that I was not offering her free rent or a discount for looking after the cats again, and that she found it traumatic to take my sick cat to the vet. Apparently, she had forgotten that the original purpose of her moving in was to care for my house and pets when I was out of town. Moreover, she was upset because she believed I was using her firewood, which she had been collecting for free and hoarding without using, to start a fire. First of all, she continuously uses a space heater in her part of the house, resulting in my electric bill exceeding $250 each month throughout the winter. This amount is more than double what it was in previous winters when I lived alone. This inconsistency is acceptable, but utilizing some of her free wood for a fire is not. To make matters worse, I wasn't even using her wood. I went out and spent nearly 30 on firewood to avoid using hers, fully aware that she would have an issue with it. Yet, once again, she jumped to conclusions, and her assumptions manifested in her mind, leading to an explosion of emotions. In any case, my best friend informed me of this rant, but as I was about to leave for 3 weeks, I opted not to confront my roommate. Just before my departure, she was overly sweet, which felt insincere and uncomfortable, and conveyed her happiness in watching my cats while I spent time with my parents, as if she were performing a great favor. My impression was that she feared her rant would reach me, not realizing that it already had. Shortly after I left, issues arose. I have outdoor cameras around my house, and I noticed on the footage that she was wearing my house slippers outdoors. These slippers are not meant for outside use, and I had left them in a specific area of my bedroom that she had no reason to enter. I was at a loss as to how to address this without sounding invasive for monitoring my cameras, but later that evening, I saw both of my cats roaming outside. I texted her asking her to bring them back in and kindly requested that she refrain from wearing my slippers. She responded curtly, stating the cats were inside and she would not wear my slippers. A couple of days later, at 10 p.m., she messaged me to say my youngest cat had gotten out and had been missing for hours. I was extremely distressed and spent the entire night worrying. I was also furious. How difficult is it to keep a cat indoors? It was a very tough night, and I was in a poor frame of mind, but fortunately, my cat was eventually located. She had accidentally locked herself in a shed, spending the night in 18-degree weather without insulation, but thankfully she was all right. On the final day of my trip, my roommate sent me a video stating that she had a sick chicken, had been researching how to nurse it back to health, and had brought it inside to keep it warm, where it had been for 3 days. The video featured a chicken in my living room. I cannot believe it, a chicken in my nicely carpeted living room. I responded with a brief but firm message expressing my disapproval of having a chicken in my house, especially with the risk of bird flu present. She quickly replied with multiple texts, claiming I was hurting her feelings and emphasizing that this is a living creature, dismissing my concerns about bird flu as exaggerated and asserting that this chicken did not have the virus, etc. I allowed her to continue her rant before sending one final, concise message. "This is not up for debate. It's my home. No chickens allowed." She responded with a thumbs-up emoji, and I could see on my cameras that she took the chicken outside and placed it on the porch in my cat carrier. On February 20, I left Los Angeles for the long drive home. After approximately 11 hours of driving, I stopped for the night, but upon checking my phone, I observed my roommate calling for my youngest cat outside during the night on the Ring cameras. I immediately texted her inquiring about the situation. Again, my cat had escaped and was once more missing. I decided enough was enough. I could not take this anymore. I intended to drive through the night until I reached home. I texted her to let her know I was getting back on the road, which upset her. She called me and yelled at me while I was driving, audaciously blaming me for my cats being missing and not providing more support when my own cat died while I was away, claiming it was traumatic for her. She said other unforgivable things. I was finished. I informed her over the phone that she had 30 days to move out and that I would be home by 2 a.m. and expected my cat to be there. After a grueling 18-hour drive, I arrived home around 2 a.m. My roommate was asleep and both cats were inside. I picked up the youngest cat, the one who had gone missing twice, and immediately noticed she was remarkably underweight. She had lost almost 3 pounds, which is significant for a small cat. Additionally, I saw that there was dry kibble set out for them. I do not allow my cats to graze. They primarily eat wet food. When I had 3 cats, I would divide 2 cans of food a day among them, supplementing with a small amount of kibble dispensed through a toy that required them to play with it to release 1 kibble at a time. Since my oldest cat passed, I ceased offering them dry food and only provided the 2 cans per day. The following morning, my roommate quietly left before I had a chance to get out of bed and was gone all day. I affixed a notice of lease termination letter, dated February 21, 2025, to her door, informing her that she had 30 days to vacate the premises. Since then, she has largely avoided me and sequestered herself in her room. I had a brief conversation with her last night in which I asked if she was searching for a new place to live, and she curtly told me it was none of my business. Meanwhile, my youngest cat is extremely unwell. She did not eat or drink at all on the first day I returned, vomited bile, and struggled to use the litter box. She has always had digestive issues, which is why I maintain a specific brand of wet food diet for them. She requires it for her health. It's easier for me to feed them all the same thing, and it's simply better for cats. The nearly empty bag of kibble I stopped using is almost depleted, while there are still cases of wet food available. It's evident that the cats have mostly been consuming kibble. Following a vet's advice, I have been force-feeding her wet food mixed with psyllium, giving her a little every hour. She refuses to eat on her own, and I must place it into her mouth with my finger. She continually attempts to use the litter box but struggles. If she does not manage to defecate by tomorrow, I will have to take her to the vet for an emergency enema. I am furious. I want this intolerable woman out of my house immediately. My concern is that she may be unable to afford another place and might not move out before March 21. It's a relatively expensive area to live in, the Puget Sound metro region. I just checked and found that similar rooms for rent in my neighborhood are priced at double or even triple what I was charging her. She has 3 part-time jobs and relies on the food pantry for sustenance, or tries to sneakily eat my food, clearly hoping I do not notice. Spoiler alert, I do. She drives a 1998 Toyota that I signed over to her when her own vehicle broke down, a whole other saga of drama. The point is, this woman has nothing. I have no idea where she could possibly go, but she cannot remain here. I have suggested to some close friends the notion of offering her cash for keys, like $500 if she vacates by the end of the week, but they all find it completely distasteful and believe it encourages her irresponsible behavior. I can hardly afford it myself, yet I am reaching a breaking point. She is in my home right now. I am confined to my room with my cats, caring for the sick one. This situation is unbearable. Story 4. The secrets I withheld from you. There is something I have been concealing from you since the first significant parting. A simple truth that is unappealing and not what you believed. I am reluctant to admit it to myself. It is selfish. Love is not selfish. If love is not selfish and what I am concealing is, then I must not genuinely love you. Essentially, the crux of the matter is that I cannot possibly be in love with you. If it is not love, then what is it? A fleeting moment does not endure for 16 years. An infatuation does not extend beyond what is observable. Obsession, not even close. I do not possess the time or energy to obsess over anything. I become disinterested in things I consider hobbies and often fantasize about obsessing over them. It just never materializes. The desire to avoid solitude? Absolutely not. That is contrary to my nature. I enjoy being a recluse. It has always been that way. I appreciate my independence. I dislike feeling like a burden or deadweight. So then, why does my heart still long for you? Why does every fiber of my being ache as if I am missing limbs or organs? Why does my mind fixate so intensely on everything about you? Why have I shed countless tears and pursued you? Perhaps I am merely a glitch, unable to manage anything within myself. I am an accident swirling in the wind and truly have no right to assert what I want or need. Maybe my existence should never have been, and the chaos and pain I am drowning in are, in reality, my own doing because I should not exist. Now, that sounds more like the most unstable mind that requires immediate treatment before the damage becomes irreparable. I am confident that I have not completely gone down that path. There is nothing logical between you and me. There is no rationale for us ever getting together. There was nothing to suggest that a pair should cohabitate for as long as we did. We, as individuals, are more incompatible than oil and water. We are beyond yin and yang. We are not the same, and being opposites is not accurate. Opposites attract due to balance. We did not create balance. We created an uneven conflict. Nothing makes any sense. This is solely between us. I cannot fathom what the world observed. Actually, I have an idea of what we projected, and it was undoubtedly viewed as a significant mistake with a definitive conclusion. Forget the world. I did not want or anticipate an END point. Moreover, I shall be the last person to concern myself with the opinions and current thoughts of anyone else. The world does not account for the essence of my being. It never has. It has never been my mold for processing anything. The world has never been my guidelines. It simply does not matter to me in that way. My family shares the same insignificance none. So why do I experience these feelings, and why can't I accept them? 1. I cannot emphasize enough how much the idea of being selfish nauseates me. I suppose everyone is at some point, though the depths vary. However, as far back as I can remember, I have consciously made an effort to place everyone before myself. It is just who I am. I somewhat take pride in that. 2. I have never strayed from my core essence. I was not provided with a solid foundation as a child from which to grow. I had to discover that a foundation is essential for anything meaningful, and then I had to learn how to build one. The problem was, I did not know how to accomplish that. I did not even know where to begin or what it would ultimately look like. What I believed I could rely on turned out to be a pile of sand. It would have become a mixture with water had I understood what it should resemble. That is where you entered the picture. You illuminated where I went astray. That left me scrambling to make corrections and adjustments. This is why I know it is more than a feeling of lesser love. This is where I derive the notion that I love you unconditionally. You showed me where logic needed to be applied, and you left it to me to achieve it. You did not do it for me. That would solve nothing. You cared enough to provide that insight. This is why I know you cared at some point. Logically, there is little more to suggest that you truly loved me. Once more, illogical concepts conflict with my love for you. Before this becomes any longer and transforms into something other than what I want to convey, here is what motivates my actions, what I have been concealing. I cannot believe I am expressing this here. I should be speaking to you. Yet, even in person, you would not hear me. Perhaps it is the selfishness of needing to express it that is my motive. However, if you do not read this, you are still not receiving what you desired. Who knows? I'm tired of analyzing it, though. I am undeniably aware of my feelings for you. I love you, every inch of you. The good, the bad, and unfortunately, the ugly. I do not want to eliminate any aspect because then it would not be you. Your past, as traumatic as it was, has shaped a man like no other. I love it all. We clash because I had no insight into how to navigate your peculiarities. I did not know what I was observing or what I should anticipate. I do not think you really knew either. I did my best, learning as we progressed, making changes and adjustments as quickly and accurately as I could. I apologize for every mistake in my process. I truly tried my hardest. I promise. I am accustomed to learning as I go. It is not new. But you blind-sided is an understatement. Our journey was severely derailed. A conflict erupted that caused immense damage and chaos, affecting the lives of innocents, the beings that exist because you and I created them. The idea that they would not exist through any other DNA combination, well, you remember that conversation we had. It is simply a beautiful concept. The children became the deciding factor I could not dismiss. I know you are aware of this. I believe you chose to ignore that for reasons. If they were not a factor, I would never have left. I would have remained in your personal hell until my last breath. Logically, I had to remove them from the violence and chaos. The last year or so with you was overwhelming. These past 2 years, I have felt as though I have been wasting away. The motivation to rise each morning was no longer present. I relied on the fact that the children still needed me to compel myself to do anything. It has been incredibly draining. My mind has not ceased. I feel that I might understand how your mind operates much better now. It is relentless, thought after thought. A chaotic jumble of blurry thoughts colliding with each other, while I frantically attempt to grasp hold and arrange them into a logical structure. It is exhausting. I have come to discover much more than I wished. I have unearthed explanations and answers to questions I did not realize I should have been asking all along. Meanwhile, you are crying foul, still declaring your love for me, but utterly refusing to show it in any way. There is nothing logical in loving you. But damn it, I cannot stop. No matter what I do, it will not cease. The trendy notion of a trauma bond, no, the criteria are not present. Yes, I have researched far more than I have admitted. I needed answers. I was not seeking ways to fault you, blame you, or anything else you concluded when I attempted to communicate issues with you. It is easier to persuade a wall to move, so why can't I release you? Have I stalled long enough? Are you still with me here? Are you comprehending this? All right. There is nothing rational in attempting again, not after everything that has occurred. Nothing. That is why I remain steadfast and unwilling to compromise my position. My heart cries out for you. My mind tells my heart to accept reality. There is nothing logical to return to. You claim you will not abandon your stance. You feel I have hurt you. You assert that I spoke countless lies. You insist you have always loved me. Your actions do not support those assertions. You cannot let me go either. What the heck? For me to return to you, I need it to be acceptable. I need something logical. I need the ability to stand on a factual platform that indicates it is permissible to resume loving you. Not for the world to approve, but for my own peace of mind. I need to know that I am not projecting something that will end poorly. I want to be one of the few who are admired for being capable of truly uniting as one without allowing the world to interfere. I understand that sounds contradictory, but it is not. I really do not know how to explain it. If I cannot have that, I can do nothing but love you from a distance, in silence, remaining still. Assurance will not provide the acceptance I require. I am selfishly guarding my heart because it is not okay to love you. I cannot believe I have expressed this. I fear what is to come now. You cannot move until I open up. The problem is, you believe I am harboring things I have never contemplated, let alone done. You have convinced yourself to extremes to hold against me to justify your stance. You need logic to love me as well. Now what? I have answers. I will not share them here. I have already said far too much. It rests on you to take the first step. After that initial step, I will walk with you, each step in unison if you choose to do so. I need to speak with you. I cannot leave this to chance.